Last night's Monday Night Raw, Bully, and I want to get your take and the nation's take on this. Last night's Raw was about as good of a weekly pro wrestling show that you can get. Like last night was must watch, impossible to turn off, and I can't think of a show that on a weekly basis, I'm not talking about a pay-per-view, but a weekly show being as good as what we saw last night.
Effective, episodic television.
Yep.
That makes you want to be in front of the episode when it starts and when it ends. And that's what Raw has been giving us, especially with all the little stuff going on in the background of the show. Raw is retraining the audience to concentrate on every little thing that's going on that TV screen at any given time.
I was talking to our producer, Paul, before the show, and I think the biggest difference with not just Monday Night Raw, but WWE programming in general is the attention to details. I don't think Vince McMahon had attention to detail. He looked at the big picture, but he didn't look at the details of a weekly episodic TV show. You know, we saw it many times, Bully, where there would be a story and then the story would just end and nobody would really care because we weren't really in the story to begin with. I think this Triple H regime of WWE program, especially Monday Night Raw, the attention is on the details. And I think that's why it's must watch week after week.
And I find myself actually getting a little confused at times because I'm not used to paying that much attention to all of these details. But now, since last week with me and you, and we talked about all of the little hints that were dropped along the way with the Wyatt Six and how great of a job the Busted Open Nation had done with bringing us up to speed with all of the characters and what the characters meant and the backstory. Now I'm finding myself watching Raw in a different way. I'm looking in the background to see if I pick anybody up. One of the things that happened last night with Chad Gable walking out of the arena and they passed by one of the giant 18-wheelers, and whose face did they highlight? Alexa Bliss. Who last time we saw Alexa Bliss, who was she involved with? Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, the whole Wyatt Six thing unfolding in front of us, and we're definitely going to be getting into that because I thought that was the absolute highlight of Monday Night Raw. So I like the fact that they are slowly retraining the audience how to watch Monday Night Raw, how everything matters. If you miss a little piece of this promo, or if you miss a piece of this match, you might miss an integral storyline point.
And listen, that might mean nothing, or it might mean everything. You know, we might look back at that truck with Alexa Bliss's face on and say, well, you know, it really didn't mean anything. Or a month from now, we could be talking about, well, they planted that seed on, the June 24th edition of Monday Night Raw. You're right. You have to really look around the surroundings. And we saw it leading up to what we saw with the Wyatt Six, where sometimes you saw Nikki Cross in the background. How sometimes we talk about Bully, Paul Heyman on SmackDown, where he's having a conversation with somebody in the background. Those are things that you really have to watch for and take a look at. And I love that. I love the fact that there's so many details to this show because you can't miss a segment, Bully. You're like, oh, okay, maybe I could, if I'm DVRing it, I could fast forward through this promo or this match. You can't, because there could be little Easter eggs leading to a much bigger story down the road. That's what must-watch TV is all about, Bully, is that you got to be attentive and you got to watch each and every segment. I watched that show last night, and Bully, when it was over, I went back and watched things that I had already seen, but I caught things that I had missed. Case in point is the Wyatt promo, the Bo Dallas promo, the Captain Howdy, the Uncle Howdy promo from last night, that segment. I watched it again and caught on something that I think is going to be big down the road that I did not see the first time out.
And I got to tell you, you just said something that I'm going to correct you on, but if you don't think it's the right correction, let me know. You referred to him as Bo Dallas, and I can understand why. I don't think we heard from BO Dallas last night. I think we heard from Taylor Rotunda.
I think you're right. I think it goes much deeper than a character that we saw in a WWE ring or in WWE programming.
BO Dallas is some name that they picked off a piece of paper when the kid went to NXT. That's BO Dallas. BO Dallas wasn't talking last night. There was no BO Dallas in that kid sitting across from Uncle Howdy. That was the brother of Wyndham Rotunda. And his name is Taylor Rotunda. And that's who we heard from. And I felt the need to just make mention of that because I'm getting goosebumps right now, my friend. When I saw that and I listened, and the tone and the inflection, there was no acting last night with Taylor. That was as real as it gets. Real emotion, real feeling. You're hearing from the real person who really went through his brother's untimely death. I'm not living through BO Dallas in that moment. BO Dallas has accomplished absolutely. Taylor Rotunda in that moment accomplished more in that 5 minutes than BO Dallas ever accomplished in his career. Last night's sit down gave me hope that this wouldn't be hokey. And remember your concern last week. You used the word hokey, and you used another word. I forget what it was. Cheesy or gimmicky or stuff like that. Yeah. Your concern was that this, at any given moment, could get hokey or cheesy, and you were concerned because of the Jey Uso promo after the whole beatdown, yada, yada. After last night's sit-down, I was like, whoa, there's no way in hell this is hokey or cheesy.
Yeah, how about the fact that during that segment, Uncle Howdy saying, do you feel like you're exploiting your brother's death? Like, when I heard that, I was like, wow, like they're going there. They're going down that road because those were some of the concerns that were brought up when this whole storyline started was, are they exploiting Bray Wyatt? And then he stopped and he was just like, man, all I ever wanted to be was like my brother. I always wanted, that was always my life's dream, was to be like my brother. Like I was like, wow, that, like you said, that's just, the setting is not real. The characters are over the top, but you're right. Those words were as real can get. And I was hooked. I was hooked from the ending we saw on Monday Night Raw. But then I was even more entrenched in what the words that were coming across my TV from last night, Bully. And you're right. If we're just judging from these first 2 weeks, the sky's the limit with the Wyatt Six and where they go and what happens from here. I don't think we've seen anything like this from the WWE, if at all. I really don't. And I am extremely excited. I was getting a little teary-eyed watching that segment last night, but like you just said, you just mentioning what happened last night gave you goosebumps. I got a little teary-eyed because everybody's lost somebody that's close to them. Everybody can relate the words that were coming out of his mouth last night. That was an extremely impactful segment on Raw.
I actually felt like a heaviness in my chest when it first started. Because when we got Nikki Cross sliding in the ring, and I guess it's Nikki Cross. Do we call her Sister Abigail? I'm not sure. So Gable wins his match, and the ring fills up with thick, thick smoke, and out from under the ring comes Sister Abigail, and she slithers in, and Gable bumps to his ass, and he rolls out, and then she goes over and hands this box to Michael Cole. And then, they go to commercial, and she one of the things that they did that I loved is when she walked away. Did you notice that there was no security guard in front of her? No security guards were leading the way for her. And if there were, you never saw them. Like most of the time when that happens, when talent walks through the audience, they'll have like a security guard walking in front of them or walking backwards, lighting the way. There was nothing like that for her, which gave it another hint of realism, that she just walked through the crowd and people were so spooked by her that they just stayed away. I love the way she exited the arena and then just blended into the darkness. And then they go to black. And then we come back and we see Cole at the announce position saying that, you know, he got this box. What's in the box? It's an old school VHS tape. Don't know how we're going to play it. It's a thread. It's a story throughout the show. Let's see if we can get it to play. And then when they finally got it to play, I see Uncle Howdy and I hear the gimmicky voice and I'm like, oh no. And you're the first person I thought of, Dave. When I heard like the robotic voice or the gimmicky voice, I was like, uh-oh, this might get cheesy. And then I saw Wyndham Rotunda and I was like, like the breath, the wind had left me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I felt myself move to the edge of my seat. Now, you know the old saying, we'll sell you the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. Sitting on the edge of your seat, I actually moved forward on my couch to sit on the edge because I needed to listen more intently. I was so engrossed in what was going on my TV, what I was seeing, what I was hearing. They roped me in. Now, I don't know if I just followed up on the point that I originally was going to make, but that's good stuff right there. As far as the WWE never doing it before, I think we have seen it in the past. I think we've seen it with Bray. But what we saw last night was the WWE showing that they have a set of balls and willing to go down a road that we might not have thought they would.
Yeah, and it's important that they do it. You're right. When you first hear that voice, you're like, oh boy. Because I still think there's going to be that concern in the back of your mind because the taste that the Fiend character left. And you always say, eventually you got to get into the ring. That's why, to me, boy, this has to be as real as possible. There has to be realism. They can't just be the characters we see on TV. They have to be mortal. They have to be real people, but all on the same plane when it comes to what this story is going to be. That's why, like the conversation that you and Mark had yesterday, I don't have a problem with them being together and taking a picture at a Whataburger. Like that doesn't bother me. I actually saw that, and I actually sighed, a sense of relief when I saw that picture, Bully, because they need to be mortal. At the end of the day, they need to be real. It's a cult. It's them getting together for a cause, whatever that cause is, but they need to be real people, because if you lose the reality of the situation, then it's going to be hard to follow, and it's going to be hard to have them actually compete in a wrestling ring at the end of the day.
And maybe these characters are just natural extensions of their own personalities that they feel that they need to turn into when protecting themselves from the reality of Bray Wyatt's death or any of the other things that comes their way in life in which they choose to protect themselves from. Kind of like the band Slipknot, the personalities that they adopted. And here's what I thought of last night, Dave. How would you feel if the Wyatt Six were kind of like Finn Balor in reverse? Finn is mortal until he needs to call on the demon. What if the majority of the time we see these Wyatt Six characters until they actually have to wrestle? And when they have to wrestle, they have to be stripped down to who they are, their mortal selves. Because if you can love the character that much, when they strip themselves down and they're no different than me and you, maybe you'll love them even more.
Yeah, I mean,
because now you'll be able to see the pain on their face.
Yeah, and I think, again, I always go back, Bully, to the original Wyatt family that we saw. That really captivated, you're going on over 10 years ago, but really captivated the WWE universe, where it wasn't really about wins and losses to them. They were doing it for a cause. They were doing it for a reason. And I feel like they could lose a match. They could feel pain. Like, those things can happen. It didn't bother them. They didn't care about that because they had a larger cause that they were working and striving for. I want to see something more like that. The Alexa Bliss thing worries me because you just mentioned, when was the last time we saw Alexa Bliss? Well, the last time we saw Alexa Bliss, she had supernatural powers, and she had the stuff. You remember, the stuffed character in her hands that she would come down the aisle with, and then she put trances on other wrestlers and things like that. They have to stay away from those things, because as soon as you don't believe in it, and as soon as it doesn't come real, it's going to lose the audience. The reason that we're opening up the show today, and the reason that before today's show you said we have to start with this, which is what we saw last night with Uncle Howdy, is because it's grabbing us because it's real. As soon as you mention and reference Bray Wyatt, it becomes real to the audience. They have to keep that realism somehow, some way. And again, Bully, we're talking about Triple H giving attention to the details. I'm sure they have a plan in place on how they're going to do it this time, how they're going to make it work this time, where it doesn't become a joke. They know what they're going to do. I have faith in that they know what they're going to do this time around.
How did you feel about Gable wrestling last night?
I didn't have a problem with it. Now, I know people were saying, oh, was he dead? I didn't think he was dead. I didn't think they killed Chad Gable. What they did do is they knocked him out. And I love the way he came to Monday Night Raw, where he's covering his head. He's covering his head. It's probably fear and a sense of embarrassment. He's scared. All those feelings were probably going through Chad Gable. So what are you going to do? You're going to cover your face. You're going to cover your eyes. You don't want anybody to see you. I like the way that they followed up on it, and he has a job to do. He has a job to do, but I love the way that he got out of the ring. Shit, dude, he hightailed it out of that ring last night.
One of the beautiful things about the sit down last night with Taylor Rotunda and Uncle Howdy was the way they presented this art. And when it comes to art, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We've talked about this 100 times. You can look at a piece of art and say it's the most beautiful thing ever, and I could say I wouldn't hang it on my wall if you paid me. A Picasso is worth $1 million. If you gave it to me, I'd put it in my garage and it would probably sit there. Like, no disrespect to Picasso, but you get my point. Last night, I wasn't even sure what I was watching. I wasn't even sure what I was listening to. Was Bo Dallas actually talking to another person? Was he in a dream sequence? Was he tripping on mushrooms and talking to Uncle Howdy? Like, I did not know. But that's the beauty. It can be anything you want it to be. This story, I believe. I know, Paul, you just chimed in. What was your thought? Let everybody know, because I hate when you type shit and you don't say it.
No, I just was saying that if you saw the door behind them during the interview, it made it seem like they could have been doing this interview inside the Firefly Funhouse.
Okay, so if it was inside the Firefly Funhouse, what would that lead you to believe?
That it was some sort of dream state, or some sort of, like, I don't want to say supernatural, but something outside the realm of reality.
Okay, cool.
See,
Thank you.
I looked at it differently. First of all, when I first watched it, I didn't notice the door, and then when I watched it back, I noticed the door. I didn't think of the Firefly Funhouse. I thought of the door that we saw last week when this whole portal opened of what we saw in the back on Monday Night Raw. Now, is that a reference to the Firefly Funhouse? It could be. Or this could be something completely different. And where does that door lead to now? And who could be behind that door? You know, again, there could be this sixth member. Who is that sixth member going to be? There's still a lot of questions here. But to reference Bo Dallas, like when I'm going to mention the character Bo Dallas, I liked how they referenced that last night where you've done nothing. You've accomplished nothing. Because to go back to your point, Taylor Rotunda did more in that segment last night than Bo Dallas ever did on the main roster in the WWE. And Uncle Howdy said it. You've done nothing. You've accomplished nothing. So what is that going to mean moving forward? Is this going to be a way for Bo Dallas to prove himself, show himself? Or is he going to try to go the route of being more like his brother? Or is he going to try to outdo what his brother tried to do? These are all things that we don't know. These are all questions that can't be answered until the next time we see the Wyatt Six. And Bully, we're only talking about one person that's involved in this. There's all these other personalities that are involved in this too. And let's just mention Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross, in a lot of ways, she's tried. She's accomplished some things, but for the most part, she's been a failure on the main roster in the WWE as well. She's had many different characters. Some characters went over. Some characters went nowhere. And one character, Bully, I think the WWE completely dropped the ball on. And that's the Almost Hero character. I think they completely dropped the ball on that one.
I'm not on board with your use of the word failure when talking about Nikki Cross.
Is Nikki Cross a major star? Do you put Nikki Cross on that upper echelon when you talk about a WWE superstar?
Not even close, but a failure, I'm sorry, I cannot. Just because she pulled off the superhero character so well, that alone gets her out of failure territory. I think that Nikki Cross has had a fair to Midland run on the main roster.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody wants a fair to Midland run on the main roster. Like, with all the hype from her coming from NXT, I thought there was going to be a lot more than what we saw. And you could say that about everybody that's involved in this family right now, Bully. There's going to be a story for every character and personality in this family. So there's so many different roads they're going to go on. And we're going to be in for it to see it explained. But the biggest one, of course, is Taylor Rotunda.
But at the end of the segment last night, I still got smacked in the face with my own concern and my own reality of what's going to happen when the bell rings. Hopefully, they will get us so emotionally invested in these characters, we will feel so bad for them. So let me ask you this. At the end of the segment, what was the dominant emotion that was running through you when it came to Taylor Rotunda?
I just felt like the biggest thing that grabbed me is about the loss of his brother. Like, that's the thing that came across to me where it's like, I always wanted to be like my brother, and then the failure that he's had with the WWE. So I feel like he has something to prove. That's
you felt sympathetic for him?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good thing. So maybe as they move forward, by unfolding these characters, we will feel more sympathetic for them, towards them. That if when we see Wyndham Rotunda in a ring again, and the lights go on and the bell rings and he has to wrestle, and he's back to what he originally was, maybe all of the goodwill that's built up through the characters, such as Uncle Howdy, will carry him forward in the ring. This will be truly interesting to see how it unfolds, because in my opinion, it didn't work with The Fiend. Our love for Bray Wyatt did not It didn't work in the ring. We can agree on that. The match, whether there was the Randy Orton match or the Cena match or the Seth Rollins match, there was something always wonky about it, and the build-up never, and the finale was never as good as the build-up. It's always like the character trumped everything, especially the match. The match was never the payoff we wanted it to be. Yes or no?
I completely agree. It never turned out to be what we wanted it to be.
Hopefully it'll be different this time around with these characters. Because if there's one thing that these characters all have in common, is that I think they all feel the torment that we feel not having Bray around anymore.
Yeah, and that's going to draw up feelings. The ever-present feeling of Bray Wyatt is really going to be surrounding this story and these characters. So it's going to be almost impossible to hate them because you're always going to be reminded of Bray Wyatt. And like you said, we all love Bray Wyatt. I mean, I think it's interesting that the first person they attacked was Chad Gable. It wasn't a babyface wrestler. It's actually completely the opposite when it comes to Chad Gable. So I'm interested how they're going to be, how they're going to be perceived, Bully. But the biggest thing is when, and who knows when that's going to be, when they eventually have to get in the ring and wrestle, what that's going to be like.
And time will tell. We're going to have to wait around and see. This should be, I don't know why this idea just popped into my head, but it did. How would you feel if the WWE took its time with all of these characters, so much time with these characters, that the first time we saw these characters actually wrestle was at WrestleMania?
I'm completely fine with that. I'm completely fine with that, Bully. And then if there is a cause for what they're trying to do, again, and this is something that really bothered me about Alexa Bliss. It's not about championship and titles. Like, they really painted themselves into a corner when they made Alexa Bliss the women's champion when she was this ultra uber character. Doesn't need to be about titles and championships. So you could have this ever-present theme and story, and it never has to touch your main event scene on either Raw or SmackDown.
I agree. This is the Wyatt Six were not designed to be world champions, intercontinental champions, or tag team champions. These are human beings, people just like me and you, who are tormented by something, who feel the need to hide their face or hide their identity, or at this stage of their life, hide their identity or do something different because they all share the same, either the same fears or the same sorrows or the same sadness, and that all goes through Bray Wyatt. I'm all about letting this unfold. We always used to joke around about retribution. Give it time, Dave. Give it time. The Wyatt Six, especially after what I saw last night, I'm going to give it all the time it needs, and hopefully it never touches on those wonky moments. Did you feel last night at all like it was wonky or hokey?
No, I didn't.
Good. Then that's a win for them, in your eyes at least.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be about wrestling. It doesn't have to be about wrestling for a very long time because they're trying to prove a point. What that point is ultimately going to be, we're going to have to find out. But it's not about getting in the ring, hearing a bell ring, and then trying to capture a win in an athletic competition. It doesn't have to be anything near that for who knows, if ever, that's what it's going to be about, Bully. We don't know.
And could you imagine? So Uncle Howdy reminded Wyndham Rotunda, Bo Dallas, last night about how he was a failure, right? How his career never panned out. Could you imagine if Bo Dallas, let's say we saw Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy in the next part of the next part of this dream sequence or fantasy world, and where Bo Dallas completely disagrees with Uncle Howdy, and Bo Dallas tries to have his match, and he loses again, just like he always has, and then he has to have that sit down again with Uncle Howdy, where Uncle Howdy's laughing at him and saying, "Do you see? I told you." Like there's so many possibilities to these characters and where they're going to go with them. And I think that the number one thing the WWE needs to do is make them relatable so that we all feel the same pain, anguish, torment that they feel. Because if they do strip them down when the bell rings, we will already be emotionally invested in characters that we really didn't care about back in the day.
It's true. You're 100% right. And I think the biggest thing about what I saw last night, Bully, I want to see if you agree with me, and then I'm going to open up the phones. I want to hear from the nation when it comes to this as well. 877-344-4893, 877-FIGHT-93. When, Bo Dallas, Taylor Rotundo was talking to Uncle Howdy. To me, it was like he was sitting down talking to his brother. Like, I got so lost in the segment. It was like that was Bray Wyatt talking to his brother. That wasn't Bo Dallas dressed in a mask, talking to a camera. I really felt like I got so lost in that segment. It felt like it was, brother talking to brother last night. That's how engrossed I was in that segment.
And that goes to what I just said about the beauty of it. Like, I didn't see that at all. But that's what you saw when you looked at that particular piece of art, and it worked for you. And what I saw worked for me. Thus, we were both willing to buy whatever that painting on the wall was.
And Bully, the longer you can stay in that state, the better it is for the story. As long as you can stay in that state of like, all right, fan A is going to look at it this way, fan B is going to look at it this way, and fan C is going to look at it a completely different way. The longer you could do that and keep people intrigued, the better it is for that story. This isn't one of those things where, and a lot of times in pro wrestling, Bully, and I know you say this is, KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? This isn't one of those scenarios. This is one of those where it's like, it really is going to depend on who's watching it and the mindset of the person while they're watching it. It's really intriguing to me.
The art and the beauty will be in the eye of the beholder.